This is Michael Popok, and it's time for Legal AF After Dark. Will the financial ruin of Donald Trump come not at the hands of the New York Attorney General and her $465 million judgment, even though he can't seem to get a bond anywhere related to it, at least not one that fits the bill, or any of his civil judgments, or will it be for the future securities law, civil class action cases brought by the class action bar in New York and Delaware against Donald Trump and strip him of all the money he has left? That's the road that Donald Trump is on, with his frequent comments that seem to be violations of securities laws about his Trump Media Social Technology Group, whatever it's called. I just remember it by its initials, going out of business. Sorry, DJT. You want to own a piece of a person running for the presidency? You can, literally. You can buy his stock with his initials on it. Foreign or domestic. Anybody. He's up for auction. And there's some new developments that are likely to happen under securities laws and in the Delaware Chancery Court. And Ben Meiselas and me talk about it and analyze it, break it down, and explain it to you on Legal AF. Take a listen.
I want to talk very briefly about Trump Media because it is a preview of what's to come. You know, if you're thinking about this as a book in chapters of the lawsuit, right? The Manhattan District Attorney case is getting towards the end, the same way the New York Attorney General civil fraud case ended. But now we're kind of in the epilogue where Donald Trump can't figure out how to post a bond. And now there are fights over that and fights over the independent monitors. This is like the prelude of Donald Trump starting to engage in conduct regarding Trump Media that, in our opinion, and again, this is our opinion, we're not giving stock advice. I want to make that very clear. I believe are false and misleading statements that violate securities law. If you just, before even going into Trump's statements, just think about all of the things that have happened with Trump Media already. You have the founder of the SPAC accusing a current director of Trump Media of hacking his files and engaging in a corporate coup to oust him. You've got that same founder of the Trump SPAC suing Trump Media. You've got Trump Media suing that founder of the SPAC. You've got Donald Trump and Trump Media suing the co-founders of Trump Media to try to, different people here, to try to, the founder of the SPAC and the co-founders of Trump Media are different people, suing the co-founders of Trump Media to try to take their 8.5% that they have in the company, saying that they engaged in mismanagement. And then they're suing Donald Trump in order to keep the shares that they have. You have some of the initial directors at the Trump SPAC and some of the main top first investors. They pled guilty to insider trading, making more than $22 million from the insider trading. They can face up to 20 years in prison. Again, these two brothers, the Schwarzmans, were there from the beginning at the Trump SPAC. They pled guilty to insider trading. Remember when it was pumped up when that first announcement happened? It was people like them who were making a lot of money in it. And then we learned how Trump Media was able to survive in 2021 and 2022 with a loan from Paxum Bank in the Dominica with a shady family trust that was linked to Russian oligarchs, and this bank that couldn't even, I think, make the loans because it was not licensed to do business in the United States, was one of the main kind of financiers for porn websites. And they had to set up a family trust through someone in the bank to give $6 million to Trump Media. The independent auditor at Trump Media has a 100% deficiency rate from PCAOB, which regulates independent auditors. 21 of 21 files that were audited of the auditor were found to have deficiencies. Nonetheless, the auditor did say in the report that was filed in the 8K that Trump Media that there is substantial doubt that Trump Media can exist as an ongoing concern. Even if you factor in when the merger takes place, which released about $200 million from a trust account that was held by the SPAC to Trump Media, say it was about $200 million that went into Trump Media. That's, I think, less than $1 for each of the kind of outstanding shares that are out there. So, if the shareholder's paying $30 for a share, the company only just received an influx of $200 million, and so the finances just simply don't finance, and then you got a $58 million loss on 4.1 million in revenue in 2023. I guess I could go on, Popok. Suffice to say that how Trumpian does all of that? The lawsuits, the people pleading guilty to crimes. Oh, there's always got to be some sort of Russia connection and some money that's coming from an island that I never really even heard of until until learning about Trump. I always learn new things with Dominica and Paxim Bank. But now one of the things that Donald Trump is doing as the stock is crashing, and we've seen this with a lot of SPACs out there, Donald Trump's making all of these statements saying how great Trump media is and how, it's on firm, that it's doing well and that this is the greatest movement ever. And, those are, look, you've worked in this field, Popok. This is an area of your expertise. This is exactly what you would advise any company or any person affiliated with the company that has publicly traded securities. This is like the first thing you say: do not do this. This is, you will get sued by shareholders. And in terms of what a shareholder lawsuit can look like, right? It is, if you're saying things like this company's great and it's doing amazing, and people say they buy it at, let's say, 50 while you're saying that, and then it goes down to say 10 or 20, or even right now where it's trading in the, in the low 30s. Let's just say that's the loss. One of the ways a shareholder class action would calculate the damage is the delta between the false and misleading statement and the loss. And the board, right, and Trump and the people making the statement could be found liable, individually liable, for those types of statements to the tune of hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. So why I wanted to preview this is that this is not a new area of law. This is some of the most basic things that you're not supposed to violate. I want to call it out that, again, this is just our opinion, but Trump is doing everything you're not allowed and supposed to do. And then in the future, right, Popok, he's going to whine and say, they're coming after me and this is so unfair and da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's just like, no matter what he does, this is the cycle that he brings. And at the intersection of law and politics, why would anybody want him to do this to our country? This is what he does with a SPAC. Yeah. This is what he does. Why would you want him to do this to our great country and our great Constitution? Why, Popok?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And my background, for people that know it, is I did work I have worked for firms that have represented Wall Street companies, but I worked inside of a Wall Street company, and one particularly that was involved in SPACs. They were actually a SPAC sponsor and brought many companies public, and I was involved with that. But I've said this on a hot take, and I'll say it here again now. Donald Trump is his own worst enemy, as we've described at length in hundreds of Legal AF episodes, including today. But when it comes to securities laws and Delaware, where his company is incorporated, for putting aside the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and what they can do, the plaintiffs' bar in Delaware are some of the most talented and vicious lawyers I have ever had both the pleasure and the discomfort to work with. When I was on the Wall Street side, I had to hire very good defense lawyers, and I work with them closely. And there's about 4 major firms in Delaware. I actually almost joined one before I went with another group of partners when I came out of working in Wall Street, that you hire regularly. Then there's about 5 or 6 major power hitter plaintiffs. All they do all day long is securities litigation, suing companies, their boards of directors and their founders for things like Elon Musk getting too much money in executive compensation, lies that are being made where the stock is, somebody buys the stock at, let's just use Trump Media, for example. They buy the stock 2 weeks ago at $61 when it hit its peak. It's now at $31. That's a huge delta given the amount of shares that are floating here. And that is every plaintiff's lawyer in Delaware is salivating, and I'm sure the suits will, it's not if, it's when in the next 2 weeks or a month these suits are going to be filed. And then you're going to get a Delaware chancery judge, many of which have already handled some of these matters, who is all about business. That's what Delaware court is. It's a business court. It's also ironic it's Joe Biden's home state, but it is a business court, right? That's all they do. It's all they care about. The shareholder, the protection of the market. Now, let's be frank. The worst person ever created genetically to take a company public is Donald Trump because of his fraud that's been proven, his false statements under oath that have been proven, and his lack of self-restraint and his ability and his willingness to say and do anything out loud until he's brought to justice, including pumping up his stock versus what was reflected appropriately in his financials and in his Securities and Exchange Commission required filings. You can't say in one place your mandatory filings and have your auditors say it also that your company is unstable, financially destitute, and may not survive. And here are the numbers that reflect that, and then say, I don't care what that says. I think it's a great stock and we're doing great. You should invest with me. Election 2024. That's called a false statement under securities laws, and people that will buy based on those false statements, and there are people that have done that, will then get found by these plaintiffs' law firms, become the lead plaintiffs in class action cases. And as I said in a hot take, it will be the class action cases. That will be the financial ruin of Donald Trump, especially on top of the $465 million judgment that he can't seem to get bonded properly. You and I will talk a lot about that in the next week or so when there's the hearing on the bond. And all the other places. You take away $465 million of assets from Donald Trump on top of another $100 million in assets for the other bond that he had opposed for E. Jean Carroll, you're not left with a lot of assets left, liquid. Now you bring in the civil plaintiffs bar who are going to rip him to shreds and tear him from limb to limb. Let's be frank. He didn't want to go public. That's the last thing he needs to do, is to be regulated. This is why companies often delist. They stop being public. They go private because they don't want to be regulated and they don't want public shareholders to have to worry about. But Donald Trump had no choice because he needs the money, right? He's P.T. Barnum. There's a sucker born every minute. In this case, his investors / his voters, usually one and the same. And as I said, and you and I were both right for different reasons, there aren't enough people on his social media platform to pump up his stock high enough, to prop up his stock high enough, as opposed to Reddit, where the investors in Reddit were able to save companies like AMC and GameStop and everything else that's been portrayed in the book Dumb Money in the movie. There's not enough Trumpers to do that. They don't have enough money to do it. And so the short sellers are now in play, and the stock has now been cut in half, even below the 40. It'll head down to 10, while Donald Trump can't do a thing about it because he's tied up for 6 more months. He did not want to go public, but he needed the opportunity to take billions of dollars from people, and he was willing to take the risk. It's not for me, the SEC. Yes, he can get fined and sanctioned. So can the board. But it's when they start going after that board of directors, and more importantly, not just the Trump money, the insurance money, because each of these members of the board of directors, unless they were morons, have insurance, a stack of insurance for director and officer liability insurance into the hundreds of millions of dollars.
You think they're properly insured in a Trump entity?
That's why I said, unless they're complete idiots, you would never serve on a board for Donald Trump. That's like saying, who wants to be the captain of the Titanic? Oh, I do. So, all right, let's assume I'll have to assume for now they have insurance. If they have insurance, there's a stack of 100, 200, $500 million. And that's what the companies are going to, the plaintiff's bar is going to go after to try to destroy Donald Trump. All his statements that he's making are not just mean tweets or truth socials. They are the basis for civil fraud cases with a chancery court that's like the Sphinx. I mean, I don't know how many I've appeared in front of the chancery judges. This is, you think federal judges are cold-hearted sometimes and impassive? Go before the chancery court, and we'll figure out which of the judges get assigned of the Delaware court. Donald Trump does not, as a middling, failed casino operator and real estate licensor does not know what he's in for.
And it's so brazen that, the Delaware Chancery Court and federal courts have dealt with cases that have been viewed as false and misleading statements where a company's been sued and the company denies the lawsuit in a press release response. And the denial of the accusation in the lawsuit has been found to form we believe the lawsuit is without merit, without attached to proper disclosures. That's been found to be false and misleading, subjecting them to lawsuits for the loss. So Donald Trump out there saying the greatest movement ever, it's like some of the most basic stuff. And there are no Judge Eileen Cannons on the Delaware Chancery Court. One
thing we left out, because nobody will represent Donald Trump with a 10-foot pole that knows what they're doing. Donald Trump, unlike people that I've worked for, does not have on his speed dial a sophisticated group of securities lawyers to guide him and what he's going to say in his public politics world. And he doesn't like them anyway. He's got this weird group, this virtual law firm that he's set up himself, of people that are willing to sacrifice their professional ethics to make money. So he put together this slapdash law firm of Keiss and Blanche and Haba and Cliff Robert and whoever else. That's his team. He can't call up like the firm that I worked for in New York, who's preeminent in securities law matters, and say to him, "Hey, here's what I'm about to say on the podium during. What do you think about that? Is that going to violate securities laws?" He's not doing that. He's not getting any kind of guidance because nobody's working for him. Welcome back. That was a clip from Legal AF. We do that every week, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then you can pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. You want to know what Legal AF means? Join our show. Join our audience. You'll find out. I assure you. We curate and cultivate the best 5 stories at the intersection of law and politics, and we bring it to you just like that twice a week. And then on hot takes like this one, about every hour on the MeidasTouch network. Help them get to 3 million free subscribers before when? The election on November the 5th. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, until my next Patreon exclusive content for our new Legal AF Patreon, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.